piercing shrieks of anguish filled the land. Childless and brokenhearted, they now sought to leave, but they were told they had forfeited their rights and were given a choice between baptism or slavery. And after enduring all they did, after leaving their beloved Spain with all their wealth and ease, they were submitted to baptism now, in the hope of being reunited with their children. Thousands were sold as slaves. Yet prior to being sold, they were submitted to tortures, cruelties, too revolting, too repulsive, too heart-rending to be here narrated. All Jewish children below 14 years of age were to be torn from their parents' arms or were beaten with clubs, dragged into a church and baptized. Those under 3 years of age were given to Christians to be raised as slaves. Those between 3 and 10 years of age were put on board of a ship and conveyed to the newly discovered unwholesome island of St. Thomas, called the Ilhas Paradis, or the Isles of Destruction.
The Jews have experienced fully the unequal skill of the church in administering pain. Mothers cast themselves at the feet of the tyrants and pitifully begged to be taken with their babies. They were heartlessly thrust aside. Hundreds of mothers, mad with despair, ran behind the ships as they carried off the idols of their heart and perished in the waves, the same fortitude with which the exiled people had borne so many.
The Moors and Jews of Spain, by Joseph Kraskoff.
Set free by the teen angels from his prehistoric block of glacier ice comes the world's first superhero, Captain Caveman. Now the constant companion to the teen angels, Brenda, Dee Dee, and Taffy in their hilarious and sometimes scary mystery missions. Get ready for Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels.
What is a Hebrew Israelite? Hebrew Israelites are the Most High Yah's chosen, set-apart people. We are descended from Noah's son, Shem. Our forefathers are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was later changed to Yisrael. And Jacob had 12 sons, who later fathered the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 sons are known as Benjamin, Joseph, Naphtali, Asher, Gad, Dan, Issachar, Zebulun, Judah, Levi, Simeon, and Reuben. Now, let's review a few notable Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, such as King Saul and the Apostle Paul, Joseph and Samson, Aaron and Moses, King David and King Solomon, and of course, our Messiah, Yahshua HaMashiach, along with the 12 apostles, which made up the leadership of the church throughout the entire New Testament. They were all Hebrews, all Israelites. And regarding Yahshua, Hebrews chapter 7, verse 14 reads, "For it is evident that our Hamashiach, our Messiah, sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moshe spake nothing concerning the priesthood." Again, from Yahshua to the apostles, they were all Hebrews. They were all Israelites. In fact, throughout the entire New Testament, the leadership team, the head leadership team of the church consisted solely of Hebrews and of Israelites. It wasn't until the 4th century when the leadership team of the church changed dramatically to something never before seen in both the Old or New Testament. In the 4th century, after the death of the Messiah, we have a Roman emperor, Emperor Constantine, become the head or the leadership of the church. For the first time ever, we have a Roman Gentile seated at the head of the church, along with Roman bishops. We also see similar setup in the modern day churches. Modern day churches recognize Roman Gentile church fathers, such as Martin Luther or John Calvin. This too deviates from the church leadership seen in the New Testament, which was all Hebrews, all Israelites. Once in power, we see these two Roman Gentile-led churches openly persecute the Hebrews and the Israelites. In other words, after the Roman Gentiles took over the leadership of the church, the Roman Gentile-led church openly persecuted and enslaved and killed the children of Israel. The nation of the Jews, after the destruction of the city and temple of Jerusalem, were brought into miserable bondage and captivity, and dispersed throughout the whole world. But being impatient of their miseries, they have often taken up arms and endeavored to assert their liberties. But having been subdued by most grievous slaughters, they have at length laid down their fierceness, and are forced to bear the yoke. The Christians, partly through fear of the rage of the Jews, and partly through the intemperate zeal of Christianity, have endeavored either wholly to destroy by various miseries these dispersed people, or to tire them out by the grievous and length of their miseries, and thus to compel them to profess the Christian faith. Upon this account, various edicts have at different times proceeded against the Jews. Some have prescribed them in the countries where they are lived, others have deprived them of their liberties and reduced them to slavery. Others have stripped them of these advantages and privileges which their other subjects have enjoyed, that by these means they might at length be wholly extinguished or wearied out by the miseries they endured for their Judaism, renounce it and embrace the Christian religion. Very severe edicts have been made against them, especially in Spain, where a very large number of them dwelt, and were thought to endanger the safety of the kingdom. Who exactly were these Jews who were sent into captivity to the four corners of the earth? The scripture specifically tells us it was the children of Judah who would go into slavery. Now, taking a closer look at the circumstances, we see why it had to be the children, as the prophets prophesied. You see, the parents of the children of Judah who refused Roman Christianity, they resisted and were willing to die for the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High Yah. They were willing to destroy their own lives and destroy the lives of their children to prevent them from becoming lawless. And it reads, many parents smothered their children in the last farewell embrace, or threw them into wells and rivers and then killed themselves. I have seen with my own eyes, writes the noble Catalino, how a father, his head covered with pain and grief, accompanied his son to the baptismal font and called on the all-knowing as witness that day. The father and son wished to die together as confessors of the Mosaic faith. I have seen many more terrible things that were done to them. You see, the parents of these Jews were brave and valiant men. They would not make good slaves. However, if the hearts and minds of the parents of Judah could not be turned to be lawless, then the only other logical choice would be to convert the children. To accomplish this evil plan, the Roman Gentile Church took all the children of Judah from the age of 25 years and younger to be raised as Roman Christian Gentiles. And it reads, the king had the crime committed on Sunday, the first day of Passover, March 19th. Jews up to the age of 25 years were taken. You see, the Roman Gentile Church separated the children from their parents, placed them in the care of Roman Gentile church members called godfathers or godparents, who taught them the doctrine of Roman Christianity and eventually taught them to be slaves. And it reads, "Those who remained after the expiration of 8 months were made slaves and sold or given to those of Portuguese nobility who cared to take their pick from them." 1493. King John went still further in his cruel dealings with the unhappy Spanish Jews. The children from 3 to 10 of age, whose parents had become slaves, he ordered to be transported by sea to the newly discovered St. Thomas or Lost Islands, there to be reared in the tenets of Christianity. Now, as these Jews were shipped to the west coast of Africa, it's important to note that these Jews retained their names. For example, the Jews in Spain and Portugal, their names were Isaac, Joseph, David, Judah, and Abraham. And when we take a look at the transatlantic slave trade database, a database which contains the names of the slaves that were actually on the ships, we find slaves with the names of David, Judah, Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph, matching the names of the Jews in Spain and Portugal. And in addition to these Jews, we also find the names of Israelites in the transatlantic slave trade database. You see, Israelites have a habit of including the Most High's name, Yah, in their name. And we can find this in the prophets like Isaiah, Obadiah, Zechariah. Each has Yah at the end of their name. And likewise, when we look at the transatlantic slave trade database, we see many slaves with the name Yah at the end of their name. And likewise, we see slaves with El on the last part of their name. Just like in the Bible where we have Joel, Daniel, Ezekiel, we also find slaves with El on the last part of their names. The children of Judah that were taken to the west coast of Africa and loaded onto the slave ships were reprogrammed by the Roman Gentile Church to accept the Roman Gentile version of Christianity, a version in which the Roman Gentiles were the leaders of the church and the children of Israel were done away with, a version in which these children were made slaves of the Roman Gentile Church. Slavery, with all its disadvantages, gave the Negro race by way of recompense one great consolation, namely the Christian religion, and the hope and belief in a future life. The slave to whom on this side of the grave the door of hope seemed closed learned from Christianity to lift his face from earth to heaven, and that made his burden lighter. In the end, the hope and the aspiration of the race in slavery fixed themselves on the vision of the resurrection with his long white robes and golden slippers. This hope and this aspiration, which are the theme of so many of the old Negro hymns, found expression in the one institution that slavery permitted to the Negro people, the Negro Church. It was natural and inevitable that the Negro Church, coming into existence as it did under slavery, should be permitted the religious life of the Negro to express itself in ways almost wholly detached from morality. There was little in slavery to encourage the sense of personal responsibility. And it reads, in the Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, and Episcopal churches, the colored people during the service sit in a particular part of the house. Now generally known as the Negro pew, they are not permitted to sit in any other nor hire or purchase pews as other people, nor would they be permitted to sit, even if invited in the pews of white persons. The Roman Gentile church was not only Judah's teachers of Roman Christianity, they were also their slave owners. And it reads, there are in the United States about 2,487,113 slaves and 386,069 free people of color. Of the slaves, 80,000 are members of the Methodist Church, 80,000 of the Baptist Church, and about 40,000 of other churches. These church members have no exemption from being sold by their owners as other slaves are. Instances are not rare, in other words, it's common for slave-holding members of churches selling slaves who are members of the same church with themselves. And members of churches have followed the business of slave auctioneers. In some of the older slave states, as Virginia and South Carolina, churches in their corporate character hold slaves, who are generally hired out for the support of the minister. The following is taken from the Charleston Courier of February 12, 1835, and reads, on Tuesday the 17th instant will be sold at the north of the exchange at 10 o'clock. A prime gang of 10 Negroes, accustomed to the culture of cotton and provisions, belonging to the Independent Church in Christ Church Parish.